Hey everybody, welcome to the review from Is It Same Escape on YouTube. It is 11:03 p.m. I just finished watching Bullet Train, the new Brad Pitt action extravaganza movie. As per usual, it would be spoiler free, and let's go ahead and get into the details of this review. I am going to ask everyone here a question about the certain films that they like. I grew up watching a lot of action films, and whether it was Arnold Schwarzenegger, Chuck Norris, Steven Seagal, Jean-Claude Van Damme, Sylvester Stallone, you name it. I grew up watching a lot of action films, the exploitation grindhouse material, and just from the 70s, 80s, 90s. A lot of these films that came out during that point in time, they all had one theme in common. None of them made sense, with the exception of, say, Terminator and Terminator 2, since those stories are much more deeper as far as presenting a unique theme that allows you to think about the possibilities. But those films, the action films that I grew up watching during that period, they all had one theme in common. None of the stories on the surface made sense. You simply watched them for the explosions, the action, the fight sequences, and just for the sheer fun of it. And Bullet Train, how I view it, is a combination of three of my favorite films. Is you take John Wick, The Usual Suspects, and Pulp Fiction. You take those three films right there and you combine them into one giant, insane ride of a film. That's exactly what Bullet Train is. You just take those three and you up the violence, you up the profanity, you up the blood, and you just up the humor and the dialogue. And before you know it, that's exactly what you're presented with when you come with the Bullet Train. Bullet Train is directed by David Leitch, and he is also one of the minds behind John Wick. He also directed Atomic Blonde with Charlize Theron, which is a great film, by the way. If you haven't watched it, please do. He also was behind Deadpool 2. He produced Nobody, and he directed Hobbs and Shaw. And one thing you have noticed, with the exception of Atomic Blonde, since that's more of an espionage, thought-provoking thriller, you notice those themes of just a film with the, and also I guess you could count Deadpool as being more of a serious type of comic book film to a certain extent. You just know what you're receiving and on the surface. But say Hobbs and Shaw, Nobody, John Wick, and even Bullet Train, you just know that on the surface the stories make no sense because all you're doing is watching the insanity unfold before your eyes. And Bullet Train is a film that has Brad Pitt starring as a contract killer or snatch and grab individual by the codename Ladybug, who is sent on a mission to retrieve a briefcase of unknown contents. Unbeknownst to him, you have different conglomerates of contract killers who are on his very trail for that same briefcase. And before you know it, all these specific characters that you are coming in contact with when you're watching the film, each of them have their own personalities and have their own stories, and in a way it reveals itself very similar to a Pulp Fiction like film, where you see the characters, you see their backstories, and you see how it coincides with the present. And I have to say, this film is, and this is not a knock on it whatsoever, when you watch it, you know the story makes no sense whatsoever. I don't even know if you could say there's a story behind it. You just simply know that whatever it is that you're watching, it is full insanity and just full of violence, blood, profanity, and wonderful fight sequences, I have to say. And I absolutely enjoyed every single minute of it. It reminded me so much of what I grew up with during the 80s and the 90s and even to the early 2000s. And of course, when I was a little kid, I can remember watching those horrible, intentionally cheesy films, like, your cheesy Hong Kong martial arts films and your ridiculous action films from the 70s, where it just intentional bad acting, horrible dialogue, and none of it made any remote sense. But being a little kid, all you cared about was watching the action anyways, and you didn't care about the plot. And that's what the Bullet Train is. You are simply there to experience a film of 2 hours, of a 2 hour plus film with nothing but action, blood, violence, profanity, and wonderful humor. It stars Brad Pitt, Aaron Taylor Johnson, and Brian Tyree Henry. And the cast in general, just a star-studded cast. Michael Shannon is in it too, and I don't want to go through the list of simply naming every single actor or actress as a part of it, because we would be here all day. But any actor or actress that you could think of is most likely in this film. And there's three cameos that is very unexpected, and one in particular was very amusing and hilarious. And that while I am not the biggest fan of that actor, I will say that he has this sense of being able to portray an awkward type character where he is poking fun at himself, and it's hilarious. I mean, I thought that scene was brilliant. And Aaron Taylor Johnson, I will say where the film shines the most is when Aaron Taylor Johnson and Brian Tyree Henry are interacting with one another. Their dialogue is just pitch perfect. They have all everyone involved has wonderful chemistry with one another, and they just hit out the park. It just everything is so perfectly timed with how they interact with one another, and that to me is the sign of a brilliant film that knows that it's not taking itself too seriously. It's just saying, you know what, this is what we're going to do, and this is what we're going to give the audience. We're not going to have any type of deep, serious political message in it. We're not going to have any form of agenda. It's simply this is what the audience wants, and we are going to provide the true essence of entertainment to them, and that's what Bullet Train is for me personally. I loved every single second of it, and the unique thing about this film in totality is how, remember when I mentioned how every character has a story that's uniquely tied to them, and it all coincides with what's actually unfolding towards the crescendo of the story. Excuse me, is how each of those characters, when the twists are revealed, you don't necessarily see it coming, and it's I've always found twist endings to a certain extent to be be very brilliant as long as it's done well. And very few films have the tendency of being able to reveal a twist ending in a surprising and unexpected fashion. And I can really only name a few that have caught me by surprise. This caught me by surprise because it was just, with all the insanity going on anyways, just the fact that they managed to intertwine a twist within the carnage blew my mind completely. I loved every single second of this film. I thought it was absolutely brilliant and excellent and entertaining. And Brad Pitt, I'm not the biggest Brad Pitt fan, with the exception of, say, 12 Monkeys, Interview with the Vampire, and this film, and that's really it. Again, I'm not the biggest Brad Pitt fan. I've just never really been into him as an actor, but I could definitely give him his credit when it comes to this type of performance, because he plays the awkward, passive, contract killer, snatch and grab individual, whatever you want to call him. He played it to a T, and I just had a wonderful time with this film. And the music, I was very, very surprised with how well they managed to incorporate classic pop songs from different genres and eras of music into J-pop cover versions, and I thought it was pretty catchy. Even though I could sit there and listen to the Bee Gees "Staying Alive" song, the original, and still enjoy it, there were times where I'm sitting there and I'm hearing the Japanese version, and I'm singing along with the song in English while they're singing it in Japanese. I thought that was pretty clever too. And also, I will also mention that it gives off the vibe of Japan. Just if you feel like you're really just in the atmosphere of Japan, and that's what makes this film just great for me. You're really able to find yourself in that era of the world and take everything in from a technological basis, and just from an overall excitement and wonderment direction. So I thought Bullet Train was absolutely phenomenal. I do recommend it. It is not for children. I'm going to go ahead and say this. It's not for children. There is a lot of blood and profanity, violence, and sexual innuendos. There's a lot of themes going on here that is definitely not for children. So please do not bring your children to watch it. Other than that, I do recommend it. I give it a 10 out of 10, a 2 thumbs up. I say emphatically, watch this film. I don't believe you'll be disappointed, and that is my review of it. Please let me know in the comments section of my channel what you thought about it. Let me know on my Facebook what you thought about it, and if you're interested, please feel free to join my Discord. I am not sure what my next review is going to be, but I will say next week I am going to be watching Dragon Ball Superhero, and I will be doing a review on that for sure. But I hope you all continue to do well, remain safe and healthy, and you'll be hearing from me again. Take care, and peace out.